Don't you dare call this a streamer, and don't even think about calling this a nymph. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the mini meat whistle. It's made its way all across the Blue Ribbon Circuit of the Ozarks, all the way up to the Driftless, tussling with the dirtiest brown trout that Iowa and Wisconsin have to offer. It is tried, it is true, and most of all, it is tested. It's one of my absolute bread and butter flies, the mini meat whistle. And if y'all had a dime for every time you heard me say mini meat whistle, y'all would be quite wealthy individuals. But because that is not the case, and I don't have that kind of cash laying around to shell out as compensation for my rambles, I'll offer up a consolation prize of sorts. I'll give away my super secret, ultra exclusive recipe on how to tie the mini meat whistle. And by super secret and ultra exclusive, I am totally kidding, because this is an extremely simple fly. It is super easy to tie, and I'm gonna try and show you guys 3 ways to tie it. But before I do, a lot of tying videos don't really discuss the why, the when, or the how of a fly. They're just like, here it is, have fun with it. So I'm gonna stop right now and do a little bit of explaining. If you have no interest in this, go on and skip ahead. The recipe's just a little ways down the video, it's fine. But let's first get into why use the mini meat whistle. On that mini meat whistle, just doing freaking work. And for the why section of this little explanation, we need to get strapped into our DeLorean, and we need to go back in time to 5th grade. Sitting in your little desk listening to Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so, blah, 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 and then all of a sudden, boom, food chains come up. We're talking about bugs getting jacked by frogs, getting jacked by cats, keystone species, the whole 9. It is, zing, dialed in. I am so in there. Well, let's take that concept and apply it to any trout stream you find yourself in. There's a good chance, if you're on a trout stream, that is a action-packed, just bio-dense environment from the bottom up. We're talking nutrient-rich water feeding the plants feeding the macroinvertebrates, the macroinvertebrates feeding the forage fish and the baby trout and all the little creepy crawlies up into the big bad mamma jamma dirty 30 brown. And if you put yourself in the shoes of that big nasty Bucky Brown, sitting there thinking, man, am I gonna really eat 20 nymphs, get out into the riffle and risk getting jacked by an eagle, or even worse, a Euro nympher? Oh God. Or am I gonna sit, grab one protein-packed meal in the form of a chub or a bait fish and just hide under my bank until the evening comes out and I can go jack hex or mice or whatever is jumping in to my stream? If I was that big bad brown trout, I'd be choosing the forage fish. And that is why I love to fish the mini meat whistle. It is an aggressive approach, and it is playing on that section of the food chain. Those forage fish, those sticklebacks, the rockhoppers, the mad toms, the sculpins, whatever that little section of that food chain is, just right above your mayfly and your caddis nymphs. That is what in my experience, the more aggressive, bigger fish in a system are going to be feeding on. It is a high reward sort of meal for them, and they're gonna just collaborate. But now that we kind of have a better explanation of the why of this, let's look at the when to fish the mini meat whistle. So I ended up getting that last guy on the purple and black mini meat whistle. I don't know who they are, but they are right when they say timing is everything. When it comes to fishing the mini meat whistle, it is all about the timing. You think about spring, summer, and a little bit into fall, that is when I love using this pattern. And it really all kind of comes together with regards to what the weather's doing and what the water clarity is doing. When you think of spring, April showers bring in May flowers. No, wrong. April showers bring big bad trout, hungry trout too. Because what's happening when those showers are coming in, it's putting fresh life, putting that much needed rain into the system, raising all the levels, making it a little bit murky, and displacing your bait fish and your nymphs, and even pushing some critters into the water, making those trout just absolutely feed bag crazy. They're just buffet munching. And that is why I like throwing this mini meat whistle, because it can resemble so many things in a cloudy environment, moving fast. It is a big profile bait, and it's just gonna get hammered. And it has gotten hammered, let me tell you. But moving on into summer, the same concept applies. You think of the rumbles of a late, just dog day summer thunderstorm, the flash of lightning, the crack, and you just boom, next thing you know, your favorite stream is raised like a foot. I mean, things are just blown out, but it's murky, it's moving quick, and those fish know that everything in the county and the next drainage over is getting pushed into that river. And again, they've got their feed bags on. They're a little reckless abandon. And the mini meat whistle can look like a spider. It can look like a bait fish. It can look like a cicada getting drowned. It can look like so many things. It's about keying in on that profile. That profile is so money. And yeah, into fall can be a little bit more difficult, but when it comes to late fall and winter, the water clarity is usually gin clear. And you're gonna be so out of luck because yeah, it is a bigger pattern. It is a little bit more flamboyant pattern. It's not going to get the same looks, and it's not going to get the same eats as it might in the spring and the summer and into early fall. So I would advise some caution when throwing this pattern around the lovely winter time. So with that being said, let's move on to the last little explanation category, that being the how. On the meat whistle, baby, that is a nice chonker brown. In all of my experience using this mini meat whistle, I've devised 3 effective ways of using this fly. The first and most simple being under an indicator. This could be a thingamabobber or a dry dropper, whatever indicator, your style. It is so money, dead drifting that sucker, just right along run, right along riffle, right into a deep pool, and watching that indicator just get thrust, just dunked into the water as a fish is just clobbering that mini meat whistle. The second way, kind of in the same realm of fishing under an indicator, what I'll do is when I'm drifting my fly through, at the end of my drift, I'll do a pseudo swing, where I'll swing it through and I'll give it a little flick. I'll give it a little wrist action, watch it twitch. And I can't tell you how many fish I've seen come across the pool just because of the motion given with that twitch and just smack my mini meat whistle. So that's the second way. The third way is when I really see that aggressive bite, when I really see them chasing my flies, I'll pop that indicator off and I will use it as a pure streamer rig. And it is so very effective doing just that. So you guys have just seen the when, you've seen the why, and you've seen the how of the mini meat whistle. Sometimes I get worried that fly tying videos don't do a good enough job of justifying, why even bother getting all the materials and wasting all this time trying to learn a new pattern if you don't know when to use it, where to use it, and how to use it. Like, I don't know, it just doesn't make much sense to me. So I hope you guys didn't mind me geeking out, sharing all my fishing knowledge real quick before I actually get into the tying portion of this video. And this tying portion is gonna be a little bit different too. I'm gonna offer up 3 distinct patterns, 3 different ways I like to tie the mini meat whistle. One being the classic, the most simple, easy to tie. The second being a little bit more spicier, got a couple more cool little trinkets on it. And then the third one just being stupid. All out, all the sauce, just looking so garish, but it is just as effective as the first 3, the last 3, all of them are cash money. So let's get into the tying portion of this video right now. Like I had mentioned earlier, this fly is so super simple, and besides a hook, a bead, and whatever thread you like to use, all we're going to need for this pattern is some pine squirrel Zonker Strip, and that can be really in whatever color you decide. I personally like brown, but that's our material list, so let's jump right into getting this thing tied up. The first step into making the mini meat whistle is going to require us to build a small thread dam on our 60-degree hook bend. Now, what we're going to do is create just a few wraps to stop that bead from riding up. This way, it's going to give us the exact presentation that we want. And a couple wraps later, we should have enough. Give it a few tests just to make sure our bead isn't sliding forward. And then what we're going to do is we're actually going to whip finish it. Give it 1, give it 2, maybe even give it 3, and we're going to cut it off, seed our bead, and work on the rest of our fly. Now, I know it might seem a little counterintuitive to keep attaching and reattaching our line, but I promise you it'll all work out in the end and be a nice little fly. But what we're going to do is build up our thread body and make our way towards the bend of that hook, where we're going to cinch down on our Zonker Strip. And this part isn't very important, it's more for my own aesthetic, but when I'm attaching that Zonker Strip, I like to have the leather side facing away from the hook shank. And as you can see, it can be a little bit difficult to wrestle with there, but once you get it down, cinch it down nice and tight, and give it a couple good thread wraps to really lock it on to your hook. After a few solid thread wraps back behind our locked in Zonker Strip, what we're going to start doing is making forward wraps. And you might notice that there's the slightest overlap while I'm wrapping that strip forward. All this is going to do is help make a nice strong fly as we work to coax that fiber back towards the tail. I know it might be tempting, but don't get too greedy with those wraps because it's almost time to finish up this fly. We just have to lock down that Zonker Strip and make a couple whip finishes to get this thing where we need it to go. And the whip finishes not only lock down all our materials, but it makes a nice cheeky hotspot for those big nasty browns to look at. And in no time flat, we have ourselves a classic mini meat whistle hot off the vise, ready for immediate usage. Not only is it extremely simple to make, but it's a really effective fly. I don't know a whole lot of the flies out there that are gonna give you this much bang for this little buck, but you know, that's just me. I'm a little biased, I get it. But you know, I love the classic model just as much as the next guy, but sometimes I like a little bit more spice in my life. So let's take a look at another model of the mini meat whistle that I like to tie with just a little bit more flair on it. So let's get after it. Each mini meat whistle I tie is going to start its journey in a similar fashion. First, we're going to lock in that bead, build up that thread dam, and move our way back towards that hook bend. But as we move that line back towards the hook bend, we're going to make a slight deviation. I'm going to add in just a few strands of crystal flash to give that tail section a little bit more pop. Now all we have to do is rinse and repeat the steps from before. We're going to lock down our leather strip side, facing away from our hook shank, get a few nice tight wraps in front and behind, and then we just got to make some forward wraps with a slight overlap all the way up to our bead. Once we lock down that zonker and give it a good snip, we get to have a little bit more fun now. We're gonna add one of my absolute favorite tying materials of all time, that being the mini rubber legs. I tell you what, I have so much fun putting these on dry flies or even on streamer/nymph patterns like the mini meat whistle. I just think it adds a really nice accent to the fly itself and gives it some really nice motion in the water. Make sure those legs are nice and locked in because we are about to finish off this fly. What we're going to do is we're going to break out the dubbing spinner and add a nice, big, poofy dark brown collar to really cap off this spicy little number. We'll give that dubbing spinner a few good wraps before we lock it down and finish this fly off with a few solid whip finishes, like always. But to finish this fly off, don't forget to trim down your rubber legs and your tinsel so that it looks a little bit more cleaner, and then you'll be good as gold, ready to fish. And version 2 is hot off the presses, ready for some big nasty trout. But as you can see, we added 3 extra elements and it added a little bit more time, but relatively it still was super simple and pretty quick to make. That flash in the tail mixed with the barred legs giving a little bit more motion and that collar giving it a bigger profile, all that's gonna pulsate and flash together and create a really, really nice pattern. As you can see, I switched up the color. This is more of a burnt auburn with a brown collar and is more so pointed towards our brown trout imitations, but this is a super nice pattern. This is probably the one I use the most, at least this version, but there's one more that is just all the sauce. It's got so many bells and whistles on it. So let's get into the third and final, probably the most difficult pattern here, the sauce, the saucy sauce mini meat whistle. Let's go. So starting off our third and final pattern, I'm just gonna go ahead and skip all the basic steps that we've already seen in the previous 2 flies, and I'm gonna get right to it. After we tie on our crystal flash and before we tie on our first dubbing noodle, I'm gonna go ahead and add a tail. I'm gonna cut off a nice strip of pink zonker and just tie it in at the end. Now, making the body completely out of cut zonker strips spun into dubbing loops is very time consuming and somewhat unnecessary.
especially given the fact that I'm probably going to lose it in a tree when spring rolls around. But it allows you to really blend some cool colors and, in all respects, make a really beautiful fly. But now that we've added legs, finished both dubbing loops, there's really not much else left to do other than give it a cheeky trim, and yeah, 1 or 2 good whip finishes to completion, and we are ready to fish.
Oh my goodness gracious, that is too much sauce, folks. We have just whipped up our third and final pattern. A little bit more complex. We added a couple little touches, couple spins, couple wraps, making it a little bit more streamlined. But the end result is a pretty fly that will probably catch some fish. It's not going to be any more effective than the other 2 patterns that I've tied today. It's just a little bit more pretty. You know, they say beauty's in the eye of the beholder, and this is one beautiful fly. But folks, that is going to do it for me. Let me know what you guys think. This is a very new style of video for me. I've never done one of these before. Let me know what you think. Do you like it? Do you say, ah, no, we don't want to see any more? Or if you do want to see some more, I'd love to tie up some more flies, especially my bread and butter ones, much like the mini meat whistle. So yeah, if you guys haven't yet, go check out my IG. I'll link it down below. You know, I'm putting up a lot of other fishy content over there, and that little community's growing pretty quick. Oh, and not to mention, I'm gonna be doing some giveaways on it too. So yeah, might as well go give it a follow, right? But folks, I have to say, as always, thank you so much for sticking around. Thank you so much for supporting this channel and yeah, entertaining me with all my BS. Gosh, if we all had a dime for the amount of times I've said mini meat whistle, we'd all be rich individuals. But since we're not, I'll leave you with this. Wherever you find yourself, I sure hope you keep some mini meat whistles deep in that fly box, feet in the water, and until next time, tight lines.